I came to bring fire to the earth. Do you think that I have come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. Perhaps it's not quite the message you were hoping to hear. And it does seem strange. Is this the same Jesus who says in John's Gospel, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives." The world dishes out quite a lot of violence and division. Do we need more of Jesus? At first thought, one might suppose that our reading from Isaiah helps explain what Jesus means. It certainly has its share of violence. "I will tell you," says God, "what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down." It's a kind of violence that we hear about more than once in Scripture. We had it in the Psalm today as well. The vineyard is the image of the chosen people. God has given the people great gifts and asked in turn that they love God and love their neighbor. Instead, they've abandoned their faith and oppressed one another. What can prevent the punishment they have so richly deserved? It sounds a bit apropos for our own time too, doesn't it? The world of big business seems in large part to have lost any sense of moral and civic responsibility. A good many of our politicians seem to have adopted the same deeply immoral stance. And it's hard to see how we are going to avoid more nasty economic and political shocks of the kind that we've experienced in the last few years. Judgment of God, well, we couldn't really complain if that's so. We don't have a lot to brag about right now. We license the rich to commit piracy. We fail to nurture the young. We're careless of the poor. It would be hard to suggest that a bit of chastening would be unjust. Is this maybe what Jesus is talking about? Well, no. That's clearly not it. Jesus would probably agree with Isaiah that the world at large had rejected the love of God and oppressed the weak. And he may have even agreed that it deserved whatever it got, but his purpose was not to bring punishment. In fact, he tended to emphasize the long-suffering of God. And what Jesus was doing was not to inflict divine violence, but to show up the evil of the world's violence, to make it inescapably obvious. When he says that he has come to bring fire and division to the earth, he doesn't mean that he's about to bring in the last judgment. He means that he is summoning people to take sides. Some people, scholars and others, understand Jesus as intending to summon people to revolution. But I think that's not quite it either, not at least in the political sense. He could tell that revolution wasn't going to resolve the problems. When the Zealots, a generation later, did rouse the Jewish people to revolt, they turned out to be as oppressive as anybody else. And they brought disaster on the whole nation. Violent revolution doesn't always replace one form of tyranny with another. But as we're reminded every day in the news, it has a pretty strong tendency in that direction. What Jesus did was different. He dared the authorities to put him to death without legal cause. and he outfaced them when they did it. He put them to public shame, and he doomed to failure their efforts to maintain stability by violence. He opposed violence with truth. And that's the kind of trouble Jesus called on his followers to make as well. It doesn't mean that we follow the exact scenario Jesus did. It wouldn't work anyway. He made his choices in terms of his own particular historical context. We live in a time that has some things in common with his and other things that are quite different. The exact same approach is not going to work today. But the point remains the same. Jesus chose to live as if we didn't have to conform to the violence of the world. As if there were room for a life of integrity in this world. Not necessarily an easy space, a safe space where we could be completely comfortable, but at least a chance to live a life of attentiveness and love, a truly humane life, even if the cost was high. The letter to Hebrews makes the same point in that beautiful passage that we read. It tells us we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. People who in many different ages have caught hold of something of value and lived it out, even though some of them went through sufferings as grave as any that Jesus experienced. It's not a conventional list of saints. Some of them, like Gideon, were very rough-edged warriors. Some, like Samson, were sort of freelance ruffians. Some, like David, were not only warriors, but consummate politicians with all the compromises that implies. One, Rahab, was a prostitute. Some were famous leaders, like Samuel, who had these problems too. And others were quite ordinary people whose names we don't even know. What they had in common was that they grasped in varying degrees the same vision that Jesus sets before us. To live as if there were room in the world for faithfulness and integrity, for justice and honesty, for love and generosity. It may cost a great deal, but it is possible. They had the vision, and the vision gave them hope, and the hope manifested itself as courage. And this courage created the glorious lineage of people that our author celebrates here and invites us to become part of. Revolution can sometimes do the world some good, though mostly not. And even when it succeeds, it's a long, difficult struggle to get from the fresh breeze of, say, an Arab Spring to the hoped-for fruition of an Arab Autumn, a season when the fruits of revolution may become available to all. And many revolutionary springs have turned into the droughts of tyranny long before they got anywhere close to bearing fruit. It's a beautiful dream to think of a world in which justice is fully served and people are ready to live together in respect and affection instead of jealousy and betrayal. It's a beautiful dream. We call that dream heaven, or the life of the age to come. And we know that it's not a description of the world we live in. Still, it's possible to live the dream in our own lives with the opportunities that our lives offer us. Often, they're quite small matters. Opportunities to respect one another, to aim at peace instead of taking umbrage. They probably will not cost us our lives, though they may well cost us the surrender of our own image of perfection, our insistence on being right all the time, our determination to grab and hold on to what we want. I don't say it's easy to take those risks, but it's possible. It's the world, really, that produces division, not Jesus. Jesus actually came to offer a renewal of peace and hope, the peace he promised to leave with us. He knew that the world wouldn't want that gift, but he also knew that it can still be given and received and nurtured bit by bit in this world through repeated, renewed acts of human generosity by people as apparently insignificant and powerless as you and me. Jesus did come to get us into trouble. But it's a life-giving kind of trouble. Trouble we will get through with trust and hope, and perhaps a dose of sheer doggedness alongside it. And it's the way forward into a richer and more joyous and more peaceful life.